WAEC and NECO examinations has been made easy by the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education with the Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO Candidates television program. Join seasoned teachers as they take you through these core subjects: mathematics, English language, physics, chemistry, and biology, targeting the exact syllabus of WAEC and NECO. Watch Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates on this station. Learners can also connect with Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates through these social media platforms to access more educational content and give their feedback. Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. Pass your examinations with flying colors.
Good day, learners. You are welcome to our platform today. I welcome you to Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. In our class today, we have biology, and the topic for discussion today is energy transformation in nature. Can I hear you repeat after me? Energy transformation in nature.
Eko Learners Support, a support program of the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education for WAEC and NECO candidates.
We will be looking at the following subtopics which we have as our learning objectives. The first one is we'll be able to highlight the forms of energy by the time the lesson is over. And the second important objective is it is expected that you'll be able to expatiate on the transformation of energy in an ecosystem. The third objective is explain energy loss in an ecosystem. And the last objective is you will be able to state the two laws of thermodynamics. Come with me as we go through the lessons. In the introduction, I have the concept to say energy transformation in nature is the process by which energy changes from one form to another in an ecosystem. What do I mean by an ecosystem? It's a system where we have interaction between plants, animals in their environment. So that is what we consider as ecosystem. And we are looking at the various forms of energy. Ecosystem embodies every aspect of a single habitat. Remember, habitat is a dwelling place of an organism. And in this case, we are looking at different elements that makes up the ecosystem. We have energy in an ecosystem. Energy is constantly flowing, is constantly being transformed. And we want us to know that plants uses energy from solar to produce food. What do we call that process? Photosynthesis. All right? So let's continue. The forms of energy, as we were taught in our junior schools or previously, we have different forms of energy, which is, they are here listed. The first one is solar energy. I mentioned earlier on that solar energy enables organisms to photosynthesize. What is that group of organisms that are able to photosynthesize? What do we call them? We call them plants. So plants has the ability to trap the solar energy which they use to produce their own food. As they produce their food, the solar energy becomes converted into chemical energy which is stored in the body, and they use part of it for their various activities. Animals cannot produce food by ourselves. What do? We depend on already made food. So the food substance in plants as well as in animals, we refer to it as a form of energy known as chemical energy. From this chemical energy, it is further transformed into potential. This potential energy is resident in an individual. But when you are putting that energy to use, we call it kinetic energy. Depending on the form of work that you are doing, if it has to do with mechanical activities, we call that form of energy mechanical energy. From there, we can generate light, we can generate heat and sound. Like you are hearing me, I'm using energy to talk. When we talk of heat energy, it's a form of energy that we eventually throw out. We dissipate it into the environment and we cannot bring it back again. Here we have a picture of the different forms of energy. When you look at this, we have radiant energy, which I mentioned earlier on that the plants depend on for photosynthesis. From this radiant energy, solar, or sometimes we call it sun energy, it is being transformed into thermal. It can be transformed into nuclear energy, electrical energy. It can be gravitational energy. I mentioned earlier on the mechanical energy, or we even transformed it into light energy or chemical energy. Do we have this in living things? Yes. Different activities that we call metabolism enables us to carry out one or two or even all of these forms of energy. At this point, okay, I have a small task for you. It's a class activity. I want you to just take your biro, your paper, and quickly attempt the following questions. The first one, what do we mean by life processes? The second question is, what is energy? We are looking at energy today. And the third one is, I want you to state the ultimate source of light to the ecosystem. That is, what is the ultimate source of energy into an ecosystem? And the last one is, I want you to tell me your understanding of what feeding relationships. I'll give you just a minute or so. I know you're already working on it. Let's compare notes. Bring out your answers and come with me. Our first question was, what do we mean by activities of life or processes of life? This can simply mean what? Activities of life. But you know, in our elementary biology, we always refer to this as what? Characteristics of living things. And the common acronym which we give is Mr. Niger. I'm sure you can write the full meaning of Mr. Niger. Quickly do that. The next question is, we are asked to define energy. And what does it mean? Energy is ability to do work. The third one asks for the ultimate source of light or energy in an ecosystem. And we have it as sun or solar energy. Remember, plants uses this to produce their own food. And the last question is on feeding relationship. And simply put, it is the interactions between organisms, interaction based on what they eat and how they obtain their food. And I said this indirectly, we are looking at what? Food chain. We can mention food web or trophic level. This you have done when you were looking at functioning ecosystem. All right. I've tried to explain this earlier on, an ecosystem. That an ecosystem is a community of organisms and their physical environment interacting together. Once we hear ecosystem, you are looking at plants, you are looking at animals and how they relate. Remember, I stated plant photosynthesize. They are called autotrophs. Animals cannot produce food themselves. What do? They depend on already made food, and they are called heterotrophs. So they have an interaction. Even in some homes, some of you may have a small ecosystem in your homes, How do I mean? You have a pot of flour in the corner, maybe corner of your room or sitting room. And before you know it, you have 1 or 2 ants that comes there. That forms a mini ecosystem. Energy flow is the flow of energy. What do I mean by this flow of energy? Nutrients and food through living things in an ecosystem. The different organisms are grouped into, the first one is producer, and the second group is consumer, forming a food chain. You know, when you draw a food chain, our focus today is not on food chain, but usually a food chain will always begin with a producer, which has to be a plant organism that are able to produce their own food. So along that line, we have energy being transformed from plants to animal in form of chemical energy. The energy is produced eventually, the energy produced eventually floats into consumers occurring at different trophic levels along a feeding relationship. In a quick way, remember consumers, we had them as herbivores. Do you still remember? What are the other group? Herbivores, we have carnivores, and the last one is what? Omnivores. These are consumers at different groups. I'm sure you are looking at this. This is my picture. I want you to look at it, and it shows what? Energy flow. Remember I said plant produces food and they transfer the energy in the food in form of chemical energy to animals. Here, in this picture, here I have the solar energy variable light. The plant traps this light to produce food. You can see plants here. And when this energy gets into the plant, it forms chemical energy. Plants will respire, they carry out various activities of life, processes of life. And from there, they are able to carry out digestion, they carry out respiration. And through this, energy is being transformed. When plant is eaten by animals, the chemical energy, which is in the food that we eat, maybe you are eating rice, you ate mango or apple, you derive energy, chemical form of energy from the food substance. Animals eat it and it comes into the animal as chemical energy. This will further be converted into other substances. It can be converted by some animals into electrical, mechanical, chemical, or we have it eventually being lost out of the ecosystem as what? Heat energy. I have another picture that depicts how this energy flows. Energy transformation. How energy flows in ecosystem. Looking at this, I have a plant here. This plant is a producer, a primary producer, which will be eaten by a herbivore. A herbivore in this case, if you look at the study of trophic level, a herbivore at this point represents primary consumer. It's a herbivore feeding on herbs. Then we have a smaller animal called carnivores. I have a snake here. Are you seeing it? Here is a snake. And at the last level, I have a hawk at the last level. Okay? I have a hawk at the last level. So the energy that was in the plant is being transferred into the herbivore, from the herbivore to the body of the carnivore, and eventually a higher carnivore takes the food. In this instance, we do not have omnivores, but remember omnivores can feed on either plants or animals. So this explains how the energy is being transformed. Plants are producers, animals are consumers. The other group, when you look at the flow of energy, is what we call decomposers. What did I call them? Decomposers. What do they do? Decomposition is the breakdown of wastes and dead organisms by organisms called decomposers through the process of biodegradation. Bio represents life, they break it down, and the nutrients goes into the soil for plants to take up again, and the energy there is being transformed from one form to another. Okay? How is the energy lost in the environment? We are looking at the subtopic energy loss. How do we throw out energy? We are still coming there to see how this energy moves around. The energy from the sun passes through food chain. We have explained this. And when this transformation takes place, it's only a fraction, a small portion of the energy from the solar that is being used by the animals, by the plants, primarily being used by the plants as organisms that photosynthesize. The energy in them is being transformed to the animals, consumers. Plants, they respire. Plants brings out waste materials, they gather it in their body, and some other processes. So a form of energy is being lost through these processes. Let's now look at animals. Quite a number of the animals, they are able to move around, and by doing that, they dissipate energy. Even when we respire, when we remove waste, we lose energy to the atmosphere. The rest of the energy is lost as what? Heat along the food chain. The energy can be lost through reflection at the earth's surface, the ground, and the water bodies. Where you see large bodies of water, ocean or sea, the energy that is being radiated, plants are not there to capture it. So the quantum of energy that radiates on that large bodies of water is being lost. And the houses, they don't have, many houses on their roofs, they don't have plants. So that energy is lost. The quantity that comes from the sun is gradually being thrown out unused. It cannot, I've mentioned this, through the process of respiration, ejection, and excretion, energy is lost. Progressively, energy is lost at the different trophic levels. Thereby, no energy transformation is 100% efficient, since some are being lost as heat. We are still looking at a pyramid here that depicts or reveals how the energy is lost into the atmosphere. Come with me. Let me just take a little time to explain. When you see a pyramid, at the base is wider and it has a tip end. But when you look at it progressively, the quantity of energy that was made available at the producer level through the solar energy is being lost. You can see it here. It's being lost out as heat. When you see, look at this end, it's showing that energy is being thrown out as heat. So progressively, the amount of energy available from one trophic level to another is being lost. We have producer, we have herbivores, we have some of the organisms here are carnivores, some are omnivores, and at the peak, we have them as carnivores. At different trophic levels, energy is being lost. We want to look at this very end, the laws of thermodynamics. What is the last part of today's lesson? The laws of thermodynamics. Thermo, in a way, relates to heat, energy. We are looking at this, and there are two laws that is put together that we are looking at this in this class. We are looking at the first law of thermodynamics and the second law of thermodynamics. I want you to read along with me. I'm sure you are there, learners. Let's take it together. The first law of thermodynamics says that the energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So what happens to the energy? They are being transformed from one form to another. Remember at the beginning, I mentioned the different forms of energy. Can you mention some? Okay, let's go together. We have solar, transformed into what? Chemical energy, chemical to potential. We have kinetic and other forms. But at the last point, we have heat energy. And the second law of thermodynamics states that in any conversion of energy from one form to another, there is always a decrease in the amount of useful energy. The other time that I showed us a pyramid, remember we looked at this, and you discovered that in the transformation of energy from one trophic level to another, there is a reduction in the amount of energy, useful energy, that is made available. So we are emphasizing the second law of thermodynamics, that progressively, as we looked at that pyramid, energy was being lost. Now, what does the implication? How do we apply the laws of thermodynamics? As energy flows from producers to primary consumers, from primary consumers, the energy flows to secondary consumers, then to tertiary consumers. That is the trophic level 4. We started from trophic level 1, 2, 3, and finally at trophic level 4. They are not all used up. The energy, they are not all used up at various stages of trophic levels. So what happens? Less than 20% of the energy are used up. And I did explain earlier on how the energy that are not used up are being lost as heat. And this explains the transformation of energy. So in all, what are we saying? Each time one organism is consumed by another organism, the nutrients, which is energy, remember at a point I called it food, the energy in the food is transformed alongside with some being lost. So in this, we have gone through the process of energy transformation.
Eko Learners Support, a support program of the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education for WAEC and NECO candidates.
You may have one or two questions that you want to ask. I will employ you to go through the link and handouts that is on display. See you at another time. Thank you.
Acing your WAEC and NECO examinations has been made easy by the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education with the Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates television program. Join seasoned teachers as they take you through these core subjects: mathematics, English language, physics, chemistry, and biology, targeting the exact syllabus of WAEC and NECO. Watch Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates on this station. Learners can also connect with Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates through these social media platforms to access more educational content and give their feedback. Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. Pass your examinations with flying colors.
Thank you.